So the other day I had an old friend reach out to me and he wanted to hear my perspective on repeated failures and pushing through them and that kind of thing. So I thought it would be good to talk about it on here and just get my thoughts out on it as a whole. I think the most important thing to remember with failure is that you have to fail forward. If you have something that you're striving towards, a goal you really want to reach, then there's nothing wrong with failing as long as you're failing in a positive direction. Because at that point, you're just learning something new and you're learning things that you would never be able to learn without experiencing them and going through this process. And I think that's the most natural way for most people to learn. So just as a point of reference for my life, I'll throw up a clip of something I recorded for my first video and you can see the difference in the quality of what I'm doing now, and maybe you can even see a little bit of that awkwardness that I definitely felt when I first started recording that. And I really think that even as someone who isn't super into video or camera stuff will be able to see a drastic difference between what I did then, just a few months ago even, and what I'm doing now. So I'm also trying to get better at, one thing I'm also trying to get better about is expressing gratitude to people. I think that, So I really think you can see just from the quality of the lighting I used and the fact that everything around the walls looks kind of orange and I just looked like super stiff, almost like I'm like, I don't know, I'm doing like a weird like hunching thing. I don't know what that was. I think it was because of the chair I was sitting in, but it took that experience to learn what I should and shouldn't be doing. And some of the things in that video I did, after watching them back, I immediately knew how to fix them. It was just little issues that I would have never noticed unless I tried it. So I think the important thing to remember is if you want to reach a goal, then you're gonna have to try things, and a lot of the time they're not gonna work. You just can't let those things discourage you to the point of quitting. I think it's a completely different skill altogether knowing when you should actually quit something for good reason. But if you're pursuing a goal that you really want, then you're going to have to keep trying and you're gonna have to keep failing, because no one gets things right on the first time. You may have beginner's luck with some stuff, but to have true mastery of a skill or a craft, it's going to take a lot of hard work and it's going to take a lot of failures. And I've said it before, I think one of the best ways to learn is through mistakes, but they don't always have to be your mistakes. And that's why I listen to a lot of podcasts and read a lot of books and follow a lot of other photographers and videographers, because we live in an era where everyone is putting out so much useful information. All you have to do is go out and find it. Just take the time to track down the people who are actually quality and putting out good information, and you can learn from their mistakes rather than having to do all of it yourself. I guarantee that first video I did would have been much, much worse if I hadn't taken the time to watch what other people were doing and kind of like nitpick all of the little things that different creators were doing to make a better product for myself. And I'm applying a lot of those same principles now that I did in that first video. I've just learned how to do them better. I went from using a nightstand and a desk lamp to now my setup being, you know, my key light over here and a little bit of a fill light here, and I'm in a white room, so I have this black foam board here to cut out the reflection of light to create a little bit more of a dramatic look. And these are all things I understood in theory, but I wouldn't have actually understood how to do them until I tried and I messed up. And you'll even see the first video that I put these lights out, the drastic difference between bouncing a work light off of this big white wall, like a $10 work light from Harbor Freight. I think it's time to fully commit to this thing, you know, make it look a little bit more professional and, you know, really beef it up into now what is my setup that I actually feel comfortable with, and I feel like it looks much more professional. And this is a very simple setup. It cost me like, I don't know, I think $75 when all was said and done. And I still have plans to improve on this further in the future. It takes these small steps, and sometimes they're in the wrong direction, and that's okay, because you just have to keep moving and eventually you find your path again and you'll start working in the correct direction. And on top of all this, I think it takes one really important character trait, which is having humility, you know, being a humble person. I've been around a lot of people in my life that have a God complex, and I can't tell you, it is the most obnoxious thing ever. And in addition to it being obnoxious, if you have a God complex and you think you know everything, it's really hard to grow that way because you're not willing to take other people's advice And a lot of times someone looking at it from the outside in is what you need to see to improve on something. When I played baseball as a kid, I remember my pitching coach would tell me if he just had a camera and he could record what I was doing, it would make so much more sense to me. He was probably right. He never did it, but he was probably right. And the same thing happened in high school with one of my weightlifting coaches. He went around and recorded everyone on his iPad doing deadlifts so you could see what you're doing with your form. And instead of him just saying, don't do that, do this, he could literally just show you and go frame by frame, and it really helped clear up what the issue was. And maybe that's what you need to do with your issue. If you can't just have someone explain it and it's not the kind of thing that you can just record all day long, then find an alternative. At the end of every day, write down your thoughts on what happened, or write down your process for the day. And I guarantee if you do that over the course of a week or 2 weeks or a couple months, when you look back at them, you'll see what the issue was. I started doing that with my mornings. I would write when I went to sleep the night before, when I woke up, my overall mood, 1 out of 10, and then just like a few short sentences. And one of the things I realized is if I'm not getting about 7.5 hours of sleep, my mood is dramatically worse. And I'm talking about dramatically worse in the sense like I get up and then my first thought is, man, like this, I don't want to be awake. I want to go back to bed. I don't want to go to work. And it is extremely negative. And it took me essentially looking in the mirror, not physically, but writing it down and being able to read my thoughts the next day when I was feeling better and go, what is the difference between when I felt miserable and now that I feel good? And I never would have been able to see these issues that I was having until I started writing them down and, taking a look in the mirror, as it were. Because in my mind, I see bad days as failures. And there's nothing wrong with having bad days. You can't control that. It's gonna happen one way or another. But I think that we have such a limited amount of time that to just idly sit around and be miserable is a failure in and of itself. And I used to not think like that whatsoever. I used to be the kind of person that would sit and mope and just wallow in self-pity. And eventually I just got tired of it. I only have so much time on this planet, and I only have so much time as a young adult who is like able-bodied and energetic, and I want to take full advantage of that. So to me, letting those bad days just come and go repeatedly was a failure on my part. And it took a long time for me to figure out how to correct that. But now that I have, I've learned from it, I've grown from it, and I can pass on that information to other people. Honestly, I don't want to go too much more into detail about this as far as failures go, because I think that everyone has so many different unique issues that it's better to stay general. But this is the best I can do explaining my experiences with failures, because your issues, even if they're similar to mine, I don't know the context of your life. Only you know the context of your life. So that's why I recommend the journaling thing, because you're gonna be the only person who can write that down and truly understand what you were thinking. When you tell other people about it, they're gonna try to help the best they can, but they only understand your issues underneath the framework of their own life and mindset. So that's it for today. I really appreciate you guys stopping by and sticking with me on this one. And for sticking with me for this whole month. It's getting close, and part of me is going to miss doing this every day when I'm finally finished with it, but part of me is going to love a little bit more downtime. So I will see you tomorrow. Peace.